The show would run for a season. They would bring these contestants on. They would film them doing these marathon exercise extreme sessions, super calorie deprivation. What people don't know about this show is, at least I think the first season, is that the NIH, as National Institutes of Health, they were running an observational clinical study on the participants of the show while they were doing it. And then they published a number of papers about the metabolic studies that they were doing. And what they showed, okay, participants in this show lost huge amounts of weight over the show. Like the winner of the contest, is whoever loses the most weight over the show. And so, all these people were so happy. They lost all this weight. Everybody is hugging each other and saying, oh, we accomplished all these great things. Okay, but what the paper outlines is at the same time that they were doing the show, they were doing basal metabolic monitoring of all the participants. And it showed that over the course of the study, people's metabolism, everybody was slowing down. And there's some graphs in there. I have to figure out a way if I can, present these on a video or not. It's showing, okay, people's weight is going down, but people's metabolism is slowing down also. And, someone who came in the study that had a basal metabolic rate, they're burning 3,500 calories in a day or something like this at the start of the study. By the end of the study, they're only burning 1,000 calories. And it slowed way down. Sometimes this, in medical circles, I've heard it referred to as the biggest loser effect, because this study kind of put that out there of this effect. And so this is what has kind of permeated medical thinking, is this effect because these people, most people do not have the capacity to exercise as intense as these people did. Most people are not going to do a dietary process that's severely calorie restricted. And so people think of that study as like the end of the line, that, okay, if this is the most intense someone could be, I think the contestants weren't working during the show, they're just working with personal trainers, they're doing all this. If this is what happens with such extreme exercise and dieting, what chance do the rest of us have? And we don't want to trigger that effect. And so then the nutrition counseling comes in and says, well, if we know that such severe restriction is causing this negative adaptation, then we need to not do that, right? We need to keep the snacking. This is how people get into this space. You need to keep snacking to keep the metabolism going so we don't trigger this biggest loser effect, okay? The trouble is, the people on that show, in that study, basically, they were not fasting. This is severe calorie restriction without fasting. People do not complete the cycle and open up a fasting space. And this is what people are missing with fasting, is that the metabolic adaptation reverses at zero when you actually get a fasting space, heading out toward at least 16 hours. That's enough to clear out the hormonal changes of eating. So people don't understand, and this is what we have to get out into the world. When we're eating, the body's communicating throughout the body using hormones, okay? Think about in the body, think if you're a cell, right? It's dark, right? The cells can't see what's happening. The only way a cell knows what's happening in the body, little chemical signals are sending throughout the body. These are what the hormones are. It's creating the hormonal state of the system. And that's what's telling the cell, okay, this is what is happening now. So when we're eating, hormonal changes happen in the body that's controlling the energy state of the body. So food comes in, the main thing that's happening, insulin is secreted, especially with carbohydrates. That insulin is floating around. It's communicating to the body, okay, we're in a food burning zone here. The food energy is coming in, and this is not runoff storage mode time. You see what I'm saying? It's time to operate off the food. And so if little bits of food are coming in all the time, maybe little bits of food are not enough to power the system. And so we think, okay, we'll just take the energy from the body fat. And then this is true in the short term. And so then it works, right? So people start a standard diet. They start calorie restricting. This is what everybody is taught. You burn more calories than you're taking in. Okay, so that's working in the short term. That cements in this cycle. Oh, it's working. But what you're not seeing are the hormonal and metabolic changes that are happening in the body. Because we're calorie restricting without fasting, the insulin is high. And so think of it from a cell. Now the cell is confused. The cell is like, okay, the hormones are telling us that we can't be accessing the body fat because there's food here, but then there's not enough food to run the system. And so it has to take the energy from the body fat. So people are initially seeing, okay, we're losing weight, the process is working, but then this is what triggers, you see, the negative adaptation. The body is like, okay, something's wrong, right? Like things are not lining up. We're like violating this hormone rule. Hormones telling us not to burn the fat, but now we have to do it. And the body wants to fix that, right? So it says, okay, the way out will slow the system down. This is the negative adaptation, to try to bring things into balance, because the body is trying to keep us alive. The body is built for survival. The body is not built to maximize our 20-year cardiovascular risk, right? The body is just trying to keep you alive till next week, right? And so to the body, okay, body fat is a precious resource. This is what you have to think of for the body. Like, we get angry with body fat. We say we want it gone. We hate it, right? Body looks at it as a precious resource. This is like going to keep us alive when times are really bad, right? And so the body tries to preserve it. This is what we can see as being like so perverse. We say, oh, why does it have to be that way? It's just how it is. And so eating little bits, slowing things down. What you don't see in that Biggest Loser study, they did a follow-up a year later. By a year later, everybody regained the weight. These people lost hundreds of pounds. And by a year later, they cycled it all back because that process was not sustainable. It ends up putting people, so they started this study, some of these people burning 3,500 calories, but now by the end of the study, okay, they're down 200 pounds, but now their basal metabolic rate is only at 1,000 calories a day. And you say, okay, now they're sick of eating 1,000 calories a day, all right? Now they start eating 1,300 calories a day. All of a sudden, they're still eating way less than when they started, but now they're eating 300 calories a day more than their basal metabolic rate. So they start gaining weight, even eating 1,300 calories a day. And that's then the real mental misery starts, because it's like, how can I be gaining weight when I'm only eating 1,300 calories a day? It's because of this whole cycle of negative adaptation. And I know Pat said last week in a message, like, I thought if you get into that state, like you've damaged the metabolism and slowed it way down, I didn't think you could ever fix it. And what I would say is, don't think of it as damage, okay? People have not appreciated that the metabolism is just flexible, right? The metabolism is not one set thing that, is genetically programmed or that can even be damaged. It's just a spectrum of responses that the body uses to the environment. And when we change that environment, we can change the way things are working. So someone in this scenario, we've brought things all the way down. In order to get out of this, how do you get out of this cycle? You open up actually the fasting space. Don't do like these people did, 800 calories spread all throughout the day in tiny little mini meals that are not satisfying. Actually, condense that And, but much better physiologically, eat 800 calories in one meal. Like if you have to eat 800 calories, don't eat it as, 4 little mini snacks and never a satisfying meal, because then you're always hitting throughout the day, insulin always rising up, no fasting space. Clear out a big fasting space, eat one meal in a day, all of a sudden you have opened up, at least 18 hours physiologically where you are getting into pure fasting space in the body, and you have your one meal, and then you're kind of 6 hours, out from that where your body is processing that. That's a much more efficient way to eat 800 calories if you're trying to lose weight. It's just, what is the goal? If your goal is to preserve body fat, if your plane crashed on a tropical island somewhere and you have bits of food and you're trying to live as long as possible, it might be better actually to space it out and use that effect. Okay, but we're not in some disaster scenario. We're trying to make things as easy as possible and trying to get out of this negative adaptation. So you flip over, concentrate the calories into an actual meal. This is what the body's designed to do. Body's designed to eat a meal, then all the hormones can ramp up and actually process that food and get it put away, and then you can get back into a fasting space. All those hormones that are blocking access to the body fat can go away, and then we get in a fasting space. And then in a fasting space, what people don't know anything about is that there are counter-regulatory hormones, and this is where I used to talk to everybody about in the clinic and bore people to death. I hope I'm not boring you to death. Adiponectin, this is the most common hormone. Once the insulin drops, the calories are totally gone. Adiponectin is the hormone that will pull that energy back out of the body fat. But you can't get that hormone. That hormone is not produced until the insulin actually drops out. And you basically can only get to that space through fasting.